It was a quiet, humid evening in Belfast on August 21, 2000. The steady hum of the city seemed muffled under the weight of its history, where every street corner whispered of past struggles and bloodshed. The Crumlin Road, long known for its ties to Northern Ireland's troubled past, was particularly quiet that night. Jackie Coulter and Bobby Mahood sat in a parked car, the engine off, their thoughts lingering on an unsettled peace that had long evaded their communities. Jackie Coulter was a 46-year-old Loyalist paramilitary, a senior figure in the Ulster Defence Association, UDA, and a man who had spent much of his life in the shadows of Belfast's most brutal conflicts. But for all the violence he had witnessed and, at times, participated in, Jackie had started to see things differently. In recent months, he had been working tirelessly to end the bitter and bloody feud between the UDA and the Ulster Volunteer Force, UVF, a feud that had taken too many lives, including close friends and former comrades. Bobby Mahood, a former member of the UVF, sat beside him, his face a mask of quiet determination. They had been allies in a shared cause, both tried to forge some form of understanding, a bridge between two factions locked in a deadly rivalry. Neither of them were naive, they knew the risks. But they also knew that if they didn't try, the killing would continue, and the cycle of bloodshed would never end. Their plan was simple but dangerous: to talk, to find a way to call a ceasefire, to end the violence that had torn apart their people for so long. They had connections, influence, and the scars of war between them, but most importantly, they had hope, a hope that perhaps their actions might one day bring some semblance of peace to the people of Belfast. It was a fragile hope, but it was all they had left. As they sat in the car, the shadows of the evening growing longer, neither man was aware that death was approaching. The tension between the UDA and the UVF had reached a boiling point, and both factions were on edge. Coulter, as a senior member of the UDA, knew that any perceived betrayal could be deadly. But he didn't expect to die this night. He didn't expect to die at the hands of those he had once fought beside, by a rival faction that had once been his own. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered by gunfire. The sound echoed through the quiet street, the sharp, cold crack of bullets cutting through the air. In an instant, both men slumped forward, their lives extinguished before they could even fully comprehend what was happening. They had been shot, in what was later confirmed as a targeted attack by the UVF. The Progressive Unionist Party, which had ties to the UVF, would later admit that the killings were a reprisal for an attack on the UVF by the UDA. Yet, no suspects were ever named, and the real reasons behind the deaths of Coulter and Mahood remained shrouded in mystery. Some believe that the killers had mistaken Bobby Mahood for his brother, Jackie Mahood, who was also a figure in the UVF. The confusion, the misidentification, only added to the tragedy of the moment. The two men who had been trying to stop the bloodshed were now victims of the same violence they sought to end. In the days that followed, Belfast was awash with speculation. Had Coulter and Mahood been caught in a crossfire of revenge and mistaken identity? Or were they sacrificed on the altar of a bloody feud that refused to die? Many wondered if their deaths marked the end of any hope for reconciliation between the UDA and UVF. Jackie Coulter's death was a bitter reminder of the personal cost of the conflict, the men who had once fought together now standing on opposite sides of a divide that had no real victor. But in the wake of their deaths, the very thing they had sought to prevent, a renewed surge of violence, did not come. Instead, their deaths, tragic as they were, seemed to make others question the futility of further bloodshed. The story of Jackie Coulter and Bobby Mahood became a symbol of the price of peace, a haunting reminder that sometimes those who fight for it are the first to fall. Years would pass, but the streets of Belfast would never forget. The city, scarred by decades of conflict, would continue to search for healing. And for Coulter and Mahood, two men who had once been enemies but were now martyrs in a war that refused to end, the streets would speak their names in whispers, two souls lost to a history that could never be undone.